You're wearing a mask. You're standing with outcasts, the underdogs, the lanterns in the dark. I see a world that will never know your sacrifice. You have led the enslaved to freedom, but they must still hide from those who don't understand. But you'll be there for them. You'll see their humanity when no one else will. You'll be their guardian in the shadows.
In our last episode, we completed the game by siding with the Institute. Now, it's time to go back to the point where we first arrived at the Institute. And this time, we'll complete the game by siding with the Railroad. We had to work with the Railroad in order to decipher the information on the Courser chip that we got at Green Tech Genetics. But they are also one of the factions that could have helped us build the Signal Interceptor to teleport into the Institute. But in order to build the Signal Interceptor with them, we actually had to go through quite a few hoops. We infiltrated the switchboard, the Railroad's former headquarters before it was raided by the Institute, cleared it, and recovered a prototype for their Dr. Carrington. Then we created a settlement and turned it into a Railroad safe house for synths. They called it the Mercer Safe House, and there we met the caretaker. We'll talk more with him later. Once we gained their trust, the Railroad helped us build the Signal Interceptor, and just before we teleported to the Institute, Desdemona gave us a holotape. She instructed us to load it into any terminal in the Institute, whereupon we would download data and get into contact with their man on the inside, codenamed Patriot. Inside the Institute, we can use any terminal to load the network scanner holotape. We read the contents of this holotape in episode 16, so to proceed with the quest, we'll initiate a network scan, copy our encrypted message to the Institute network, and then almost immediately, we get an urgent reply. We can read Urgent Reply 001. Acknowledged, meet at the Advanced Systems Maintenance Room. From here, we proceed with the quest like normal. We walk to the elevator, Father's voice comes on the PA system, we take the various elevators until we arrive at Father's quarters. We meet Synth Sean. We learn the truth about Father, but then we could kill him.
Please.
If we kill Father, we have to fight our way back to the teleporter. Upon taking the teleporter, we arrive outside the ruins of CIT. We complete the quest Institutionalized, and we start the quest Burning Cover. Report to Desdemona. We also fail our quest Underground Undercover. Heading back to the Railroad HQ, we can try to talk to Desdemona.
It's not an easy road you've chosen, but you're never alone in this.
Bad news. They kicked me out of the Institute. I can't get back in.
Well, thank God you're still alive. Listen, I don't need the details. We were asking the impossible. At this point, we're done. Our only chance to do anything in the Institute was contacting Patriot.
Is that it? There's no other option?
Not with the Railroad.
I was hoping for better news than that.
I don't know what to tell you. Pam's already crunched the numbers on this eventuality.
We have to think of something to save the synths.
I wholeheartedly agree. Pam's already crunched the numbers on this scenario, though.
So we hit a snag and you're giving up?
No one has ever made it to the Institute uninvited before. Ever. And even if we could get in, without help, the Railroad simply doesn't have the numbers to do anything to the Institute. To forcibly free the synths in the Institute, you need an army. There may be a way. Not with us, but with your Minutemen. If you continue rebuilding them, you'd have that army. Then with the data you got using Tom's holotape, maybe they can find a way back into the Institute. If we can help with that, let us know. But I fear the fate of all the synths lie with the Minutemen now.
If we choose this option, we are unable to complete the game by siding with the Railroad. Our only options now are to work with the Brotherhood or work with the Minutemen. But this shouldn't come as a surprise, because the entire point of working with the Railroad was to infiltrate the Institute in order to gather information and free the synths. By turning the Institute hostile, we blow our cover and we lose our opportunity. And so, instead of killing Father, we have to play along, pretend that we're the good parent, a father who wants to know more about his son and his son's institute. And so, after completing our conversation with Sean, we at last have our run of the Institute. We have to complete Sean's quest before we can leave the Institute, and so we can talk to the heads of the 4 major departments of the Institute. Now, before we meet Patriot, we could head back to the Railroad and tell them that our infiltration was a success.
Hey, it's the Wanderer. The Wanderer's back.
Oh, thank God.
Woo! See, Jazz, I told you the molecular stabilization matrix held.
Funny, you didn't sound certain yesterday. It is really, really good to see you. Did it work? Did you make it inside the Institute?
You thought I died?
I saw you disintegrate right before my eyes. Then the whole machine blew up. Tom insisted you dematerialized in time. But Tom's track record with experiments leaves something to be desired. I've never been happier to tell Tom I was wrong. It did work, right?
The signal interceptor worked. I've been to the Institute and back again.
I almost can't believe it.
I got there, and the Institute is paradise. Healthy people, clean, plenty to eat.
A paradise built on the backs of slavery is no paradise at all.
I met with the leader of the Institute. And it turns out, he's my son.
What? Wasn't he just a little boy?
After they took him from me, they froze me in cryo.
Instead of being on ice for a few years, it's a few decades instead. The Institute's really done a number on you.
I'm still in shock.
Damn. I can't imagine what you're going through.
Since he's my son, maybe we can work with him.
Do you really think he'd be willing to let go of all of the synths? Even if he was, certainly the rest of the Institute wouldn't go along with it. They'd just put someone else in charge.
I'm just glad he's alive.
I know it wasn't the reunion you were hoping for, but I'm happy you got to see him all the same. Besides meeting your boy, did you meet Patriot too? Did Tom's holotape work?
What was the plan again?
Tom encrypted a holotape using the same encryption scheme Patriot used in the past. If you put that holotape on any terminal down there, hopefully you'll get his attention. Or have you already met him?
I'm working on it. Not yet. Contacting Patriot is my top priority.
If you get the opportunity to upload the holotape, do it. With Patriot's help, maybe we can score a major victory for synths.
We can't move forward until we meet with Patriot, and so heading back to the Institute, we can follow the instructions that he left us on the terminal. He said he wanted to meet us in a maintenance supply closet by Advanced Systems. Opening the door, we can travel down the hallways and open the closet door. And sure enough, as we already learned by completing some Institute side quests, Patriot is Liam Benet.
Hey, it's me. So you're the one who sent the encrypted message. How did you even do that? I wasn't sure anyone on the surface would have a chance to crack Trinity. You know, the encryption algorithm.
Trinity? What's that?
Trinity is an encryption system with a cipher, or key cut up into many pieces. You need several pieces in the correct order to unlock it. I put a Trinity piece with every synth I helped escape. It was a long shot, but I was hoping some good Samaritan would connect it all together.
Who are you?
I'm Liam Benet. My father runs synth development, and everyone knows who you are.
I'm not sure I should trust you.
You're worried about me? If the SRB cracked Trinity, man.
A friend named Tinker Tom cracked your encryption.
He must have had some serious hardware to pull that off. Wow.
What do you think?
At the very least, I'm hoping it means you won't turn me in. But you really are a friend, aren't you?
The Railroad's in the business of helping synths too. That makes us friends. Is that what it said? The Railroad didn't bother telling me. The Railroad sent me to look for someone they called Patriot. That's you.
What? The Railroad? As in the Railroad? And they gave me a code name too? I kept sending synths to the surface hoping someone would help them. I hoped the Railroad got to some of them, but I never knew for certain.
How did you help synths escape?
Through hacking. The departments focus their best talents on hard science. Why waste time on terminal security, right? The SRB is the exception, and unfortunately, they control which synths go to the surface. But a forged work order from, let's say, bioscience can get a hand-picked synth on surface detail. And it turns out the Railroad was waiting for them. Wow.
Why are you helping synths?
At first, I just wanted to see if I could get away with it. It was a challenge, you know? But then I realized the synths are really just like us, except without any freedom. I decided to help the ones that wanted to escape so they can have a better life.
If you met them, trust me, you wouldn't be that impressed.
They've eluded the SRB for decades. They've got to be incredible.
You saved a lot of synths.
So much to take in. But wait, with you in the picture, I have this idea. To rescue a lot of synths at once. But we'll need help. Where's he working now? Right. Let's go to the West Atrium. Probably best to talk about something else right now. You know my father thinks it's a living hell on the surface. But that can't be right. Heck, you look positively normal to me. No offense. I'm not sure if we could ever make the surface actually a decent place to live. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't at least try to help, you know?
Heading up the ramp, we move to the West Atrium, and there we find a synth tending to the grass.
Good. He's here. C-114. It's me.
Sir, do you require something?
It's okay, Z1. He's a friend. He's with the Railroad.
Meeting here is dangerous. And you bring a stranger. You. How do I know we can trust you?
Who are you?
My designation is Z-114, a simple maintenance synth.
Trust is a two-way street. You don't.
Excuse me, I must focus on my duties.
He's not from here. He's been helping our synths escape on the surface. It's safe.
If you insist we speak in front of him, do so quickly.
Or we could try to pass the speech check. And this is one of the few speech checks in the game that I was unable to fail.
Because the members of the Railroad have dedicated their lives to fight for your freedom.
I thought only Mr. Benet cared. But your friends actually fight for us?
That's what the Railroad does, Z1. He's from the surface.
I've never met another human willing to help. But, sir, we must make this quick.
Right now. How many synths want to escape, Z1?
The ones I know for certain? 13.
That'll take forever. Let's free those 13 all in one go.
I would do anything for my people. But how do we get them to the teleporter? It's no good. The old maintenance tunnels that lead there are always sealed. By the SRB.
If I can find a way to open those doors, could you get your synths to the teleporter room?
Yes. We'll talk later. Someplace more secure.
With that, Z-114 walks off, and we can check in with Liam Benet.
Just a few high-security doors, right? Controlled by cutting-edge SRB security tech. Yeah. A head-on hack is the sucker play. So we go at them sideways. You're willing to help, right? I can't do this alone.
I won't help you.
If you want to free synths, a lot of them, come back here, and we'll talk.
Of course I'll help you. What do you need help with? It depends on what you need.
Our core security architecture hasn't fundamentally changed from the old CIT days. The original security program was called Code Defender. Revolutionary stuff. We still have terminals running version 1, mothballed in storage. With some persuasion, I can get an old terminal to interface with the new security terminals. Enough to open doors, at least. Problem is, I can't even crack version 1. So I need a good old-fashioned username and a password. And that's nowhere to be found in the Institute. But if you could get me a pre-war admin password from the surface, I could log right in.
Where would I find that?
Unfortunately, I don't know. The obvious place won't work.
Your plan makes me nervous.
Z1 and I have been working on elements of this for years. The doors are the only thing stopping us. But finding the password is going to be tricky. The obvious place won't work.
Sounds like a harebrained scheme.
I've been probing SRB security for years. It'll work. but finding a password won't be easy.
I'll find it for you.
That's great. Unfortunately, the obvious place to look won't work. The CIT ruins were picked clean years ago, but some of the admins had to live off campus. Ask your friends in the railroad. I need those login credentials.
Well, Liam Benet has certainly come up with an ambitious plan.
Liam,
You get me what we talked about, and I'm in business.
But we need a pre-war copy of the login credentials for an ancient, outdated security algorithm called Code Defender. Where on earth are we gonna find that? Perhaps Liam is right. Perhaps the railroad can give us a clue. Heading back to the railroad, we can talk with Desdemona, and she has the same dialogue tree she had if we came here before finding Patriot. But after finding Patriot, we find an option to say that we met Patriot.
I met Patriot. His name is Liam Benet.
I knew you'd get the job done. We need every scrap of intel you picked up in there. Write up a full report on Pam's terminal. After you're done, we'll analyze it and figure out the next step. Get to it.
Okay, write up a report on Pam's terminal. We met Pam earlier when we first worked with the railroad to get the Courser chip decoded. She was the one who had us set up the Mercer safe house. We learned a bit about Pam while we were exploring the switchboard. While there, we learned that Pam was a pre-war machine used to try to predict the future. The railroad found it at the switchboard, which was originally a DIA headquarters, and reprogrammed it to serve the railroad. The railroad headquarters is really small, and since it's in such a confined space, I can't give you an overhead layout of the place. In the middle of this catacomb is what appears to be a covered-over well, where Desdemona stands and plots for the railroad. To the north is the doorway we used to find the railroad. It leads back to the Old North Church. Turning back around and moving east, we find Tinker Tom's section. This is where his terminal is, and it's where he decoded the Courser chip when we came here for help trying to get into the Institute. Turning north, we find a small nook with a couple of beds on the ground, and here we find two chalkboards. The first chalkboard has a list of safe houses and agents. We chose the name Wanderer when we first started working with the railroad, and we see that it's crossed out here. Looks like the railroad thought that we died when we used the signal interceptor. I wonder if they'll change that later. And here's the list of all their safe houses. Allen and Herkimer are crossed out. Looks like those two have been compromised. We see that they have 5 safe houses in operation: Dayton, Griswold, Stanwix, Ticonderoga, and Mercer. Mercer's the name of the safe house that we established for the railroad. Then there are 2 safe houses that are in limbo: Augusta and Randolph. Looks like the railroad doesn't really know if those 2 are still operational. We'll have to work with the railroad more to learn more about them. Also on the wall is a legend that helps us decipher all of the railroad's rail signs. Deacon briefly introduced us to these rail signs when we infiltrated the switchboard, but he only covered a couple. This is a legend for all of them. A rail sign with a plus in the center means that an ally is nearby. This was the one that we found on the makeshift shack that was on the hillside overlooking Vault 111, which means that someone from the railroad thought that an ally was inside Vault 111. That is, that we were a potential ally. A cube means that there's a cache nearby. We found a cache like this at the switchboard. An X means that danger is nearby. An arrow is a pointer, calling out a point of interest. A little house icon is a safe house. And a drop of blood is a dead drop. The railroad uses dead drops to share messages with each other. Moving east, we find a makeshift bulletin board. Here we find photographs, scraps of paper connected with red bits of string. This is a great little set piece, but it appears to have no lore implications. Most of the photographs are degraded, rotting away on this board, and the ones that we can clearly see don't depict anyone we can recognize in the Commonwealth. The scraps of map presumably depict parts of the Commonwealth, but the ones that are large enough don't depict any section that we can actually recognize, and most of the other scraps are degraded. And the red bits of string connecting them together don't appear to make any sense. We have a couple of photographs connected together as if those people have a relationship or are connected, but I don't think we can interpret any lore from this piece of set design. Then turning east, we find the firing range. We can practice our shooting in here, but it's pretty small and there's not much here. Though if we head down into it and turn right, we find a little nook with a toy alien and a rocket ship with a fork. Tasty. Turning back around, we can move back to the center and then turn north. Here we find a woman listening to the radio, possibly decoding transmissions. And if we listen closely, we hear beeps coming from the radio. This is, of course, Morse code. I actually did a video several years ago decoding these messages. There are a variety of them. One message says, Capital Wasteland available for delivery. Another message says, package lost. Raiders, repeat, Raiders. Another says, Dead Drop Disco needs a pickup urgent. Another says, Gen 1 Synth Salvage Team at Baseball Tango 8. Behind her is a break in the wall leading to a tunnel. Here we find even more beds, and at the western end of the tunnel is a door leading to a railroad HQ escape tunnel. On the other side of the door, we find a long tunnel that leads to a partially submerged section with a boat. Inside the boat is a skeleton, a first aid kit, and a Nuka-Cola cherry. As this is an enclosed, underground, flooded section of a crypt that doesn't lead to any river or major body of water, I'm not exactly sure how a boat got here. But anyway, continuing south, we eventually emerge in a sort of basement workshop. There are a few containers, and against the eastern wall is an expert lock terminal. I couldn't hack this, but if I could, it allows us to unlock a nearby security door. Inside this room, we find a weapons workbench, a couple of containers, and a fusion core and a fusion generator. But back into the workshop room, if we turn south, we find a door that leads up a staircase to another door and a terminal. The door is not locked, and it leads to the north end. The terminal is not locked either, and accessing it allows us to unlock a nearby door. However, there was no locked door we could use with this, so I don't think this terminal has any purpose. Opening the door, we arrive in the basement of a ruin. On the second floor is a chain we can remove to open a door, leading us back out into the Commonwealth. So this is a back entrance that we can use to get in and out of the railroad if we don't want to go through the Old North Church. But turning back around and heading back into the railroad HQ, we can continue exploring. Passing the lady on the radio, we find a lot of workbenches in the southwestern section. A weapons workbench, a cooking station, a chemistry station, and an armor workbench. This is where Dr. Carrington likes to hang out. He's the railroad's only doctor, and we'll visit with him in a little bit. Finally, we can turn west, where we find a power armor station next to a hole in the wall, leading down to Pam's chamber.
Setting human-machine interface to 100%. My data indicates Mercer Safe House has been established. Agent Weatherby, Thomas, aka Tinker, has delivered construction material as promised. Reward dispensed. If you are available, further assistance could be used.
With that, we finally complete the quest, Mercer Safe House, the quest that we had to accept in order to build the signal interceptor with the railroad. But we don't need Pam right now. Instead, we need her terminal. Inside, we find three options. And the first, access records. Access restricted to entity designated Railroad Alpha. And token, I'm sorry, have a nice day. This terminal is blocked, and we won't be able to read the contents of this terminal until we beat the game on behalf of the railroad. But since we're exploring the railroad headquarters now, I'll go ahead and cover the contents of this terminal now so we don't have to come back to it later. After siding with the railroad, access records reads like so. Wyatt, 2266 to 2273. 2266, November. Gathered surviving runners, held an election. I lost, or won, depending on how you look at it. After the HQ massacre, most people simply left the railroad. Only one person survived HQ, a runner named John D. He called out for volunteers to get some of the old files. No one stepped forward. My job is to rebuild the railroad from scratch. I think where Agamemnon went wrong is that HQ was known by too many people. I'm theorizing here, but once the Institute hit a safe house and leaned on anyone, the HQ would be easy to find. But how could Agamemnon know just how deadly those damned coursers are? Current count, 13. 0 synths. How the hell do we rebuild from here? Tragically, this is the earliest entry we find on this terminal, and it's only 21 years old. We know that the railroad as an organization is much older than this. Here Wyatt is talking about a previous leader of the railroad named Agamemnon, but we don't know how long Agamemnon led the railroad or if there were any leaders before Agamemnon. But from this terminal, we know that the Institute has been using coursers for at least 21 years. Coursers are Gen 3 synths. So synths have been sophisticated enough to look and act like real people for over 2 decades. But of course, we already know this from Piper Wright at Diamond City, because in 2229, a synth that looked exactly like a human infiltrated Diamond City, went haywire, and murdered a bunch of people. This became known as the Broken Mask Incident, which took place 58 years ago. It's unlikely that the railroad existed to try to save Gen 1 or Gen 2 synths. The railroad as an organization likely came about only after the advent of Gen 3 synths, which means that the railroad as an organization can't be older than 58 years old, but it has to be older than 21 years old. 2267, February. Got our first synth out of the Commonwealth last month. Threw one hell of a party. What people don't know is another runaway was recaptured by the coursers before we even got to them. John D. has been finding tourists at a pretty good clip, but he keeps their identities to himself. Operational security, he calls it. It makes me grind my teeth, but he's probably right. I think our whole organization needs to be more like a pyramid. A broad base of tourists that help out, mainly with information, then the runners and safe house owners in the middle, then agents, then HQ on top of that. Here Wyatt is laying out the infrastructure of the railroad, and we'll learn that this structure is how the railroad operates even today. Tourists are people in the Commonwealth who are not members of the railroad, but who work with the railroad. Dr. Amari at Good Neighbor, for example, is a tourist whom we've already met. 2273, March. A whole work crew of synths escaped together. 5 synths at once. We're scrambling to keep them hidden. Coursers have been spotted looking for them. They found one of our safe houses, but no one there knew where our HQ is. John developed a dead drop system we've been using. Some vocal elements, Toby, say we should shut down, but that's a 1.5 years worth of synths. What's interesting about this is that synths appear to have been escaping from the Institute before Patriot. We just met Liam Bonet in the Institute, and Liam is a young man. He's in his early 20s. But as we just learned, Wyatt was trying to help escaped synths 21 years ago. If Liam was even alive, he was a young child. He wouldn't have been able to help synths escape at that time, which means that we really can't blame Liam Bonet for the synths leaving the Institute, because even without Liam, synths would have found a way. But here, Wyatt's entries end, and Pinky's begin. Pinky 2273 to 2277. 2273 December. I just found Wyatt's journal. For whoever runs this outfit in the future, I figure you should know how we messed up. We were running the Work Group 5 out of the Commonwealth when coursers found our HQ. Total crap storm. Deacon, that's what he's calling himself now, had an escape route planned, and most of the survivors owe him their life. Wyatt didn't make it past the first hail of bullets. Something everyone should know: if one safe house goes down, assume that all hell's coming for your ass, because it probably is. Always, always, always assume the Institute has resources beyond what we can imagine. From now on, only the heavies leave HQ, and we got to move our packages fast. This slow crap hurts more than it helps. At last we read about someone we know. Deacon, first mentioned in 2273, 14 years ago. But here we learn that he's not new. He's been working with the railroad for a while at this point, because Deacon is what he's calling himself now. Well, going back to previous entries, we do see recurring mention of a guy named John D. Could the D in John D be short for Johnny Deacon? If so, then that means Deacon was the only person to survive an Institute raid of the railroad's headquarters in 2266. It means that Deacon wanted to go back to the ruins of their HQ to recover old files, but no one volunteered. Something that sounds familiar. After all, it was Deacon who went back to the switchboard with us to recover old files. It means that Deacon was the one who was finding new tourists, rebuilding the railroad's information network, inspiring Wyatt to come up with the idea of hierarchy to keep the layers of the pyramid disconnected from each other to improve operational security. He's the guy who came up with the dead drop system, which the railroad still uses to this day. And if Deacon is the same guy, then it wouldn't be surprising that Deacon was the guy who had an escape route planned when Wyatt's HQ became compromised. It could also be evidence that Deacon isn't lying when he tells us that he founded the railroad, that this whole thing is his operation.
Everyone thinks that Desdemona is the big boss. She calls the ops, gives the rah-rah speeches, but it's just an act. She does what I tell her to because the railroad, it's my show. It's been that way since I founded it.
But I explored this possibility in great detail in my dedicated profile of Deacon that you can watch here. 2275 June. Damn it! We got 2 synths, or packages as we're calling them now, out of the Commonwealth. Running the third and a raider gang caught them. Total bloodbath. PK almost lost his package near Danvers, too. I kicked Deacon out of HQ, got sick of the lying, face-changing son of a gun. That month he spent as a ghoul freaked a lot of people out. Going to keep running hard. What's interesting about this is that Deacon has been lying for a very long time. It's part of his MO. And also, his plastic surgeon must be amazing, because he convincingly lived a month as a ghoul. I mean, think about that. A lot goes into looking, sounding, smelling like a ghoul. He must have really had to commit to that character. 2276, January. Lesson: move all packages outside the Commonwealth. Lambda 8, Homestead off Parsons. She got married to a farmer. Coursers found her and it got bloody. Lost Lambda 8. Her wife almost bit the bucket too. Coursers spotted heading south with company. Watts volunteered to track them. This is a reference to Fallout 3. The courser heading south that he mentions here is Armitage, and his company is none other than Dr. Zimmer. Dr. Zimmer and his courser Armitage headed to the Capital Wasteland to retrieve escaped synth unit A321. This member of the railroad, Watts, who tailed them, is none other than Victoria Watts, whom we meet at Rivet City, and she's watching A321, trying to make sure that Zimmer doesn't get his hands on him. 2276, September. Desdemona is a real pain in the ass. Keeps harping on every little damn thing. Worse than Deacon and Carrington combined. We lost a safe house and went to ground. SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. Desdemona says I'm being sloppy. I'm getting sick and tired of leading these misfits. Here we learned that Desdemona and Carrington have been working with the railroad for at least 11 years. But this ends Pinky's entries, and next up, it's Desdemona, 2277 to the present. 2277 December. After we lost Trinity, Pinky Thompson stepped down. It took some persuasion. We held a vote on who should run the railroad. It came down to me and Carrington. Might be a problem there. The doctor, Deacon, and I have been analyzing the many, many mistakes of Pinky. Our batting average is roughly 50-50. Only a few synths a year make it out. It's hard to keep motivated when failure is so epidemic. We're going to hit the fundamentals: operational security, lookouts, counterintelligence, and compartmentalization. We need to reduce the response time to find a new synth runner. Now, Desdemona mentions Trinity here, and this might get confusing. We recall from earlier that the name of the coded message that Liam Bonet sent with the synths he released from the Institute was called Trinity.
Trinity? What's that?
Trinity is an encryption system with a cipher, or key cut up into many pieces. You need several pieces in the correct order to unlock it.
But I think the Trinity mentioned here is just the name of a synth safe house. It's a coincidence that the Railroad safe house Trinity shares the same name as Liam Bonet's code. 2279. 2 escapees. 1 loss, 2 reclaimed before interception. Added a new member to Core HQ, Thomas Weatherby. An Institute grenade did a number on his family farm. He's rattled but very, very smart. Hoping he can arm us with something better than pipe pistols. Organization grown. Devised rail signs and improvements to dead drops. No coursers spotted all year. Merry Christmas. Thomas Weatherby is the real name of Tinker Tom.
Agent Weatherby, Thomas, aka Tinker, has delivered construction material as promised.
He used to be a farmer, but the Institute blew it up. 2280. One of our rescues, G781, took a strange turn. Most synths are traumatized and go through the procedure with Doc A. That's Dr. Amari. G7 opted out, begged to join, did some crazy stunts with High-Rise at Tycon, called her into the HQ, promoted Glory to Heavy. She's well suited for the role, perhaps too much so. Been working with Tom. Brilliant, but he's getting increasingly eccentric. Carrington says the stress is causing severe psychological problems, but he's too damned essential. God help me. I'm keeping him on. 2 escapees, no losses. 1 reclaimed. Quiet year. Less chrome domes in the field than the last 2 years. No idea why. We'll see exactly how brilliant and eccentric Tom is in just a bit. 2281. Where to begin? Year started like crap. Coursers came out of nowhere. They found the farm. Lookouts only gave us 30 seconds of warning. Torched what we could. Casualties light. Relocated to the Beast. Then one of the B-Team scouts, Tommy Whispers, made the find of the century. An old DIA facility. Switchboard. Called him up to HQ, overdue. Gloria's taken him under his wing, God help him. Tom relocated to the switchboard, or Facility X as he calls it. Then he sent an urgent message. My first meeting with Pam... can't describe. She made some predictions, frighteningly accurate. Asked for data. Started feeding it to her. Very reluctant to help the cause, but after a long talk with Glory, she's on board. No one knows what Glory said to Pam. Deacon jokes that Pam has a crush on Glory. Certainly Pam acts different when she's around, but there's nothing emotional about Pam. With Pam's prediction, managed to anticipate a runaway. Year ended badly. We had a synth infiltrator at Mercer. Deacon caught her before Pam, but damage done. Blew the Beast and moved to Bolt Hole. Only an hour to spare before the coursers came. 2 escapees, 1 loss, 0 reclaims. Whoa! So Pam was reluctant to help the railroad until she had a one-on-one chat with Glory. How did Glory convince Pam? Does it have anything to do with Glory being a synth? Does Pam converse differently with synths than she does with humans? And we learned that Mercer is a name that they like to recycle and reuse. There was a Mercer safe house before our Mercer safe house. 2282. Promoted Tommy to be our second heavy. Tom made him a custom pistol. The kid's frightening with it. Pam has us running strange ops for data. She's not always right, but right enough to be a trap. Too tempting to rely on her predictions. One day Deacon recommended mothballing her. Took an hour to talk him down. 2 escapees. Not many runners this year. The custom pistol, of course, is Deliverer, which we found on Tommy Whisper's body in the switchboard. And I think Desdemona was expressing concern about becoming too dependent on Pam. Pam isn't right all the time, but she's right enough to make it tempting to rely upon her predictions before making decisions for the railroad. But I think Deacon here didn't want that to ever happen. Pam should be used in concert with all of the other tools they use to gather information. She shouldn't be their sole source of information, and that's why he wanted to mothball her, to remove the temptation to rely completely on Pam. 2283. One word, Patriot. Our second package of the year was different from the start. Didn't behave lost. Ran in a straight line to Diamond City. Old Man Stockton caught her before she caused too many waves. She wasn't supposed to be on the work detail and had a care package. A map, instructions, and a coded holotape. Tom's been useless all year trying to decode the damned thing. Third package sent straight to Diamond City again. Set up Old Man Stockton as the gatekeeper. Then a fourth came in after a week. All with care packages. All with more codes. Someone on the inside is helping us. Codename Patriot. All told, 5 escapees this year. And there we go, 2283. The year Patriot starts helping the railroad. That means Patriot has been helping synths escape for only 4 years. And this adds up. When we talked with Liam Benet and quizzed him about his motivations for helping synths escape, we learned that it started because he was a teenager and was bored, and he wanted to see if he could do it.
Why are you helping synths?
At first, I just wanted to see if I could get away with it. It was a challenge, you know? But then I realized the synths are really just like us, except without any freedom.
It was only later that he began to do it for moral and ethical reasons. Synths were escaping before Patriot, but in much smaller numbers. The coded holotape that Desdemona mentions here is one of the fragments of Trinity that Liam Benet sent with synths when he released them out into the Commonwealth.
I put a Trinity piece with every synth I helped escape. It was a long shot, but I was hoping some good Samaritan would connect it all together.
It was only after Tinker Tom got all of the holotapes that he was able to reverse engineer the thing and decode Trinity. It was this encrypted message that we copied to an Institute terminal, which naturally caught Liam Benet's attention, allowing us to meet him in person. 2284. An incredible year. Everything's coming together. Tom broke Patriot's code, said it was designed to be broken, whatever that means. Just 2 words, mass fusion. Sent some recon there and found nothing. Found out later why. Pam's been trying to find the location of the Institute in earnest. Failing. Deacon's convinced the solution lies in the past, not future. Deacon already knows the big secret. We know nothing about the railroad before Wyatt was in charge. Or is Deacon Johnny D? So even Desdemona thinks that Deacon may be Johnny D. The fact that she doesn't know for sure tells us that Deacon has been at the railroad longer than Desdemona, longer than Tinker Tom, Glory, and probably everyone else. Desdemona here says that Deacon knows the big secret, but Deacon uses that phrase too. It's during one of our companion affinity dialogues with him, where he claims to be the founder of the railroad.
We've been making the rounds, doing the job. It's time you learn the big secret. Everyone thinks that Desdemona is the big boss. She calls the ops, gives the rah-rah speeches, but it's just an act. She does what I tell her to because the railroad, it's my show. It's been that way since I founded it.
You really founded it?
Sure. Me and Johnny D and Watts. Hell, that was 60, 70 years ago. After a while, you lose count.
But even during this revelation, Deacon is lying to us, because he says that he founded the railroad with Johnny D and Wyatt. But we already know that Wyatt took over the railroad from Agamemnon. The 3 of them couldn't have founded the railroad if it already existed and was being led by Agamemnon. And even then, we don't know if Agamemnon was the first leader. But we really don't know if Deacon did found the railroad because Deacon is a notorious liar, and everyone knows it. But we're starting to find a lot of evidence that he might be. Deacon's been digging into the Institute sightings from years, even decades before. Or at least, that's what he says. Getting real tired of all of his lies. Well, wait. If Deacon was digging into Institute sightings from the past, could he have found evidence of Kellogg and the Institute arriving at Vault 111? Coursers caught Package 7. Almost nailed Old Man Stockton, too. One of our scouts found Package 8 heading to Mass Fusion. The coded message he carried was another location, Prospect Hill. 8 escapees this year, 1 loss, 1 reclaimed. Here we get our first hint that Deacon may have known what happened to Sean all along. Deacon thought that the solution was in the past. Who was in the past? The sole survivor, Nate, was in the past. But Deacon would only think that the sole survivor, someone from the past, was the solution if he knew what the problem was. The problem was Father, the leadership of the Institute. And he could only have connected Father to the sole survivor if he knew Sean's true nature. This would explain why we found a little makeshift shelter just outside Vault 111 with rail signs outside. Perhaps Deacon, knowing that we were Sean's father, was waiting for us to emerge so that he could intercept us before the Institute did, convince us to join the railroad, and use our influence with Sean to take down the Institute, and that's why we found him stalking us everywhere we went. 2285. Busy. We're in switchboard now. Bolt hole went down on fire. Courser's getting very active, but by God, we're rescuing synths. 9, 2, 1. Both of those 2 were from doggone lynch mobs. That's 9 escapes, 2 losses, 1 reclaimed. Well, she's telling us that regular old people from the Commonwealth were responsible for the 2 losses. They lynched synths. Yikes. 2286. A dry year. Coursers, work crews, and synths vanished for 3 months. No idea why. Worked on fortifying switchboard. Deacon was barely here all year. Chasing ghosts. 4 escapes, 1 loss, 0 reclaimed. 2287. The current year. Pam's errored out on trying to find the Institute. Took a good month to get her to run without crashing. Her being down hurt the numbers. We now have 12 safe houses, and I don't even know how many people. Carrington worries we're getting too big, but in order to move all the synths Patriot's sending us, we need places to hide them. Deacon working on secret project. Codename? Wanderer. Deacon has a wild theory and an even wilder plan. Tea party. I agree there's something strange there, but I'm withholding judgment. 9 escapees, 1 loss, 1 reclaimed. This entry was written the very year we emerged from Vault 111. The secret project Deacon is working on, codename Wanderer, is clearly trying to recruit us. But what is this wild plan of Deacon's? This tea party? This Boston tea party? But this entry must have been written earlier in the year, because we just saw the number of safe houses they have on the board, and they've lost a lot if they used to have 12, and there's no mention of losing the switchboard here. So Desdemona hasn't had a chance to update this year's entry. Next, we can try to explore latest prediction models, but we find the same entry. Access restricted to entity-designated Railroad Alpha, and token, I'm sorry, have a nice day. Even after we complete the game by siding with the railroad, we still do not gain access to Pam's latest prediction models. But with the lore read, we can at last do what we came here to do, and that's to enter our Institute report. And Nate goes ahead and types it up for us. We don't really have to do anything. This is what he writes. Institute Report 01. Though it wasn't a certainty, thankfully the signal interceptor worked. When I materialized, I found myself in an empty room. Z-114 can get the 13 synths in place, but in order for them to make it to the teleporter, Patriot needs the username and password for version 1 of CIT's Code Defender. End of report. Preliminary analysis of new data commencing. Analysis complete. Booting human-machine interface. Please consult with Pam immediately, Agent. Thank you. After recording our log, we turn around to see that Desdemona is standing here next to Pam.
Preliminary analysis complete.
Anything we need to move on?
Affirmative. codename Patriot, requires admin credentials for Code Defender security software. Cross-indexing CIT security administrators with 2077 Commonwealth Census records. Filtering by surviving structures. One match found. Bergman, Wilfred. Bergman, Wilfred. Registered as co-owner of Cambridge Polymer Labs. Estimated 81% chance of login credentials being located at this facility.
What's at Cambridge Polymer?
Cambridge Polymer Labs, LLC, had several active military contracts, specializing in robotics. The region is currently classified as extremely dangerous.
This lab better have what I'm looking for.
Warning. All predictions have a high margin of error.
Thanks, Pam.
Complement detected. Analysis irrelevant.
I'll be going then.
After you get the password report back here. With any luck, we'll have a game plan by then.
So there's an 80% chance or so that we can find what we need at the Cambridge Polymer Labs. Before heading that way, we can talk with the other members of the railroad here. Introduce ourselves, try to get to know them a little better.
Pam.
Processing. Agent. Wanderer. Your arrival was not calculated.
What do you mean it wasn't calculated? That's a strange way to say hello.
Temporarily unable to process verbal input. Still processing.
Start making some sense.
Unable to process verbal response.
Well, I'm here.
Preliminary adjustments to statistical models complete. Commencing introduction. I was, am, and will most likely be Pam. Predictive Analytic Machine.
Hi, Pam.
Introductory token recognized. Hello.
You're just a broken machine.
All systems fully functional.
Well, nice to meet you, Pam.
Introductory token recognized. Nice to meet you too. Unknown entity?
Do you work for the railroad?
Yes. My goals and the railroad organization have a high degree of correlation. They provide data. I provide first-order approximations of the behaviors of all residents of the region designated Commonwealth. Rephrasing. I predict the future.
You see the future?
That is this unit's primary goal.
That's hard to believe.
Your skepticism is valid.
But you didn't predict me coming.
That's correct.
What? That's amazing.
Caution. Biological life forms behave erratically, unpredictably. All output subject to an extremely high margin of error.
Just how inaccurate are you?
The smaller the group, and the greater the time frame, the less accurate I become. But all predictions are affected by the human element.
Good to know.
I urge you to disregard all predictions.
I have no use for faulty predictions.
Agreed. It is prudent to disregard my predictions.
Even if you're wrong sometimes, that's unbelievable.
Repeat. Caution. Reliance on this unit's predictions is deemed unwise. Operation complete. You are a rogue variable. No current or previous models predict your presence or existence. Query. What is your point of origin?
Why do you want to know?
If I cannot explain your existence, future predictive models may have an even greater degree of inaccuracy. I repeat, what is your point of origin?
It's a long story.
Processes reaching maximum capacity.
I'm not telling you that.
Insufficient data.
I'm from Vault 111, if that's what you mean.
Accessing. Vault 111. Cryo Vault. Believed destroyed. Conversation terminated. Pending construction of new probability matrix. Rephrasing. Goodbye.
And that's it. She has to process everything we've told her for a bit before she'll talk with us again. Now, Pam here has a quest that she can give us, but we'll cover that a bit later.
Welcome to the family. We're a colorful and arguably insane bunch. But you're stuck with us now. Speaking of which, if you don't mind a sidekick, let's keep a good thing going and travel together some more.
Don't they need you here?
My job's mainly intel, so the more places I go, the better I'm doing it. And you are just one big, beautiful distraction. Plenty of opportunities to learn secrets moving around in your shadow.
Let's go then.
I'm all ready to go.
And so it goes. Do be mindful out there, Mr. Deacon.
Always am, Codsworth. That's one thing you can count on.
And with that, Deacon joins us as a companion. It'll be nice to have his wit along for the journey.
Systems locked. Building statistical model for Operation Tea Party.
Wait, Pam knows about Tea Party? I thought that was one of Deacon's schemes. Well, I wonder when they're gonna fill us in. Heading out of Pam's chambers, we bump into Glory.
Glad you signed on. Means I might get to take the occasional night off.
Hey, Glory.
Hey, you. So the switchboard was crawling with bad guys. Mines and shit, too. Any of that true? Or was Deacon bullshitting me again?
Why don't you believe his story?
Saving synths ain't easy. So when we score a win, sometimes the propaganda gets laid on thick.
You calling me a liar?
Hell no. I'm calling Deacon a liar.
Pretty much. I didn't do it alone. But yeah, that's about the size of it.
That's hardcore. How'd you take down the old HQ? Please tell me you didn't go along with Deacon's in and out like a ghost crap.
Let's just say we found flaws in the facility's defenses and exploited them.
I guess that's one way of doing it.
There's a lot to be said for ambushing enemies from the shadows.
Oh no, another one?
With a whole lot of bullets and a whole lot of blood. Fortunately, the blood wasn't mine.
That's how you do it.
It doesn't matter how we did it. Only the results matter.
And that's what the railroad's about. Well, welcome to the party. After what happened to Tommy Whispers, we need another tough son of a bitch that can get shit done.
Who's Tommy Whispers?
Tommy was a second heavy at HQ. He went KIA after the Institute assholes took out the switchboard. With him gone, I've been running missions non-stop. So I'm damn happy you're here.
Thanks.
Anytime.
Yeah. It's really great to be here.
Nothing like living in a hole in the ground to get you in the mood to party, right?
Thanks for inviting me.
We should, I don't know, bake a cake? 'Cause that's what you do, right? They call me Glory, the angel of death, the ass-kicking poster child of a liberated synth.
We find 3 options here that end the conversation the same way.
It's kind of a mouthful, isn't it?
You can call me Miss Angel of Death, for short.
You have a real high opinion of yourself.
With my track record, I'm entitled to it.
I like it.
What's not to like? You're helping out my people. So some advice? Kiss up to Tinker Tom. He's batshit crazy, but he's got all the good stuff.
What sort of good stuff are we talking about?
Firepower, armor, repurposed tech. Doesn't hold a candle to the Institute, but it'll save your ass in the field.
Is everyone in the Commonwealth so goddamn crazy?
That's the price of freedom, brother.
Sounds like a good plan.
You know it.
Noted.
You take care out there.
However, if we ask her about what it's like being a synth, we open up a brand new dialogue tree and a number of ways to piss her off.
You really are a synth, right? You weren't pulling my leg before.
That's what the Made in the Institute stamp on my ass says.
We can change the subject.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Just one thing.
In which case, she goes down the previous dialogue tree. We could exult in the fact that we've finally met a synth.
Finally, I met a synth.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to meet another one of you humans. There sure are an awful lot of you.
In which case, she goes down the previous dialogue tree. Or we could try to test if she's a machine.
Synths are androids, right? Can you prove you're more than just a machine?
Can you prove I'm not? This is like one of Carrington's goddamn tests.
Compose a poem for me.
Are you shitting me? Poetry is a waste of time.
Listen carefully. This statement is a lie. Am I telling the truth?
What sort of stupid question is that?
Tell me the first thing you think of when I say dog, cloud, airplane.
What? Dog, shotgun. Cloud, pretty. Airplane, junkyard. Does that make you feel better?
Listen, I've never met a synth. I didn't know what to expect. Sorry if I offended you.
Yeah, whatever. I hate being poked and prodded. Listen, I think for myself. I feel. Like, right now, I'm a little pissed off.
How do you arrive at a thought? How do your feelings form?
I don't know. Something happens and I just feel something in my gut. Someone hurts a friend, and I want to frag them. If I'm working something out, I just build a plan in my head. Step by step. The same way everyone does, I guess.
Acting pissed off proves nothing.
You are really pushing my buttons.
I just need to know what sort of people I'm saving. You understand, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I get it.
So do you think we're just machines? If we are, then take a long look in the mirror. Maybe you're just running your brain's goddamn programming.
If I didn't know, I'd think you're human.
Exactly.
I think you just have very advanced software.
If my programming is so good that no one can tell I'm not one of you humans, what's the matter? We're done.
Do you have any doubts you're not just a machine?
In the Institute, they screw with your head. Yeah, sometimes. When things are really bleak, I wonder. But then, I remember something.
I haven't made up my mind.
I've been living free for years. And no one out there, not one person, has ever thought I was a synth. I gotta go blow off some steam. Later.
Or we could try to pass a charisma check to learn more about synths and the Institute. And if we fail...
I have a lot of questions about synths, about the Institute. Would you be willing to answer a few?
Every rook comes in here and wants to interrogate me. Wants to know everything about everything. I don't got the answers you want, okay? I don't know where the Institute is, how to get there. I know barely anything about them. I'm done talking.
But if we pass the charisma check...
If I have to. I know a whole lot less than you think. Mainly, I did surface detail. Combing over ruins and shit for salvage. The few times I was in the Institute proper, all I was to them was their thinking, feeling hammer.
Sounds rough.
Those feelings? They never quite go away.
That sounds demeaning.
You could say that.
They sound like real bastards.
They weren't really mean about it. They just treated me like a coffee maker or a terminal.
What's the Institute like?
Clean. Lots of metal and machines. But I really only saw a few rooms of it. The barracks and where I worked. I helped those assholes make more synths. Synth development is what they called it.
How do they make synths?
Damned if I know. The machines are massive, complicated. Not like anything I've seen out here.
I can't imagine what that was like.
Sometimes, I wish I could forget.
I could use specific details about these guys.
Talking about this ain't easy. There's one thing you need to know. No matter what Dez and others say, synths ain't human. We're assembled bone by bone, muscle by muscle. I've seen it. I'm gonna hit the range. I need to shoot something. Now.
A sensitive subject, to be sure, but we walk away having heard the most unique perspective about synths that we can find anywhere in the Commonwealth.
Establishing Mercer Safe House is a sign we're on the road to recovery. Thank you for that.
Next, we bump into Drummer Boy.
Hey, Rook. The name's Drummer Boy. It's my envious job to keep track of all the dead drops and grab incoming agents and tell them where they're needed. I don't suppose you want to switch places.
Why is that a bad job?
Runners at the bottom of the totem pole in the railroad. Just a hair above tourists. Being HQ's runner is a cut above field work, I suppose. Someone's got to do it.
Sure. Hope you know how to use a minigun. Oh, and soak up bullets.
Yeah, you heavies need a lot of punctuality and attention to detail, right? If so, I'm golden.
So I can order you around?
Sure. Why not? Everyone else does. But you can get your own coffee, alright?
That can be an important job.
Yeah, right. I could be replaced by a stupid chalkboard. We'll be seeing each other. A lot.
As we learned from the terminal, Drummer Boy is a runner. He's not quite an agent, but he's one step above tourist. Nearby, we find a copy of Astoundingly Awesome Tales.
Perfect.
When apes go bananas, a gorilla ate my patrol car. We do plus 5% damage with the cryolator. Oh yeah, that's right, there was that weapon we saw in a glass case back in Vault 111. We never went back to get it. I suppose we can talk about it now. The cryolator is locked in a glass case in the Overseer's room of Vault 111. As we learned on the Overseer's terminal, the Overseer himself made it. After he was locked in the vault, when the bombs dropped. It was locked with a master lock. We didn't have lockpicking at all at the time, and we don't have master lockpicking now, so I couldn't get this weapon in my playthrough. But if I had, it works like this. It acts like an icy flamer, and it's surprisingly really effective. It not only slows enemies down, giving you time to switch to a melee weapon if you want to bash them to pieces, but it deals an enormous amount of elemental damage as well, killing many enemies outright. The stronger the enemy, the slower the ice effect is to work, but it has a number of upgrades that don't require perks. This is really one of the only weapons in the game that you can fully upgrade without investing into any crafting perks. Many of the mods change the nature of the weapon. For example, the crystallizing barrel mod changes it from an ice flamer into a crystal shooter, which saves a ton of ammunition, increases its range and damage. I wouldn't call it an essential weapon, but it is a fun and powerful, unique weapon, and it's worth considering when making your build. Nearby, we bump into Dr. Carrington. We read about him on the terminal. He was the one who almost got Desdemona's job. By talking with him here, we complete a quest and start a new side quest. We don't really learn anything about him or the railroad, so we'll save this conversation for when we cover his side quest. In Dr. Carrington's corner, we find a couple of first aid kits. There's a weapons workbench, a cooking stove nearby. We find lots of chems and purified water on the shelves nearby. The railroad members live and work around the bones of the dead. Doesn't seem to bother them. And heading to the eastern side, at last we find Tinker Tom.
Everyone's all, "You've been hitting the chems way too hard." But I got my eyes open. I see. The sensor sweep says you're clean. Hooray! We're bug-free.
I went through a sensor sweep?
Every test Des will let me run. Full EMF scan, biological sniffers, and other state-of-the-art security. So the sweep says the Institute isn't watching you. Or us. But the tests lie, man.
You scanned me without my consent?
It doesn't matter. Those conventional tests are garbage.
I'm relieved, actually.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Not so fast. Okay, have you eaten anything out there? Because if you have, they got you.
Are you seriously asking if I eat food?
The food out there is dangerous. It's contaminated. That's why I grow my own food. Reclaimed pure water, local nutrients. Nothing goes in me that I don't see. That's how you stay safe.
No, I never eat anything.
You see, that's smart. That's smart, man. SMART. But you gotta be careful.
Yeah, I've eaten food.
Oh, I knew it.
Make your point.
The Institute has these tiny microscopic robots in the food, man. And they report back.
Tom, that's rubbish.
You just don't get it, Carrington. The Institute is in your blood.
That's a lot to process.
Please, don't believe a word of this bollocks.
Why is this lunatic even here?
A question oft asked. Tinker Tom is a genius when it comes to engineering. But about everything else...
If true, that's terrifying.
If he had a shred of evidence for any of it, agreed. Quite terrifying.
They're in my blood?
Absolutely not. Tom, we ran your tests extensively. We found red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Everything you'd expect.
And that doesn't get you the least bit suspicious. The results were too perfect, too expected, and that's how they fool you.
Could the Institute really do that?
Look, everyone says Tinker Tom is crazy. Until I'm right. You gotta understand, those Institute scientists have centuries on us. Just working like crazy little bees, dreaming up the most messed up stuff you can imagine. Remember, in the blood.
There's no proof.
If we waited for proof for every Psycho Institute experiment, we'd all be worm food, man.
I don't know what to think.
Okay. I can work with that.
I try and keep an open mind.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Okay. If you really want to be safe, let me give you a little shot. Desdemona says no one has to, but it will kill those little robots.
There's battery acid in that serum of yours.
You can't nuke an omelet without irradiating some eggs. You ready to shoot up?
What's in the shot?
Hey, we've got algae, some yummy bacteria culture, and just a little bit of battery acid. But we gotta burn those babies out of you. It's a hard reboot of your system, man.
I don't know.
Fine. Let them hear and see everything.
We can refuse.
There's no way in hell I'm letting you do that.
Fine. Let them hear and see everything. Okay. I hope you like your whole life being downloaded to the Institute's mainframe.
Do you have any proof?
Proof? You and Carrington. Peas in a pod.
I don't want to get into this.
Oh, I went too far again, didn't I? I'm sorry.
That'll really keep me up at night.
It really should, man.
We could lie to try and set his mind at ease, but if we fail the charisma check...
Actually, I dose myself with radiation to kill the blood robots.
Radiation? That wouldn't do shit, man. Anyway, hey, I gotta get back to making gadgets. Don't let your guard down out there.
But if we pass it...
I'll read you, man. Smart. I'd rather have some hair loss than let the Institute win.
Or we can go ahead with it.
Hit me, Tom.
Yeah, now you talking.
And if we do, we almost die. We have a sliver of life left.
Now you're encouraging him.
Hey, you get it, man. I make things around here. You go and do. You do whatever. And come back, and I will set you up.
Ugh. I feel awful. You trying to kill me?
That feeling is the price of freedom, man. Live free.
But aside from the temporary pain and blurred vision, we don't gain anything of use. Now, Tinker Tom here is a merchant.
What do you make?
All the custom toys you field agents use, my boys and I make. We're thinking outside the box, man. Gotta get real creative, real wacky to stay ahead of those Institute eggheads. Don't even get me started on all their secret projects.
I'd appreciate the help.
You and me, we will team up and kick those son of a bitches out of here.
Maybe later.
Now, I got all these ideas in my head. So building time.
Let's see what you got.
Make yourself comfortable and prepare to be astounded.
He sells a variety of goods, including a unique legendary item called Tinker Tom Special. It's a custom hunting rifle with a legendary effect. If we are not yet in combat, our VAT's accuracy is increased, but it costs more AP. Aside from this weapon, his inventory is not that impressive. Yet. His inventory will actually change and update as we complete quests for the railroad. Nearby we find Tinker Tom's terminal. Property of Tinker Tom, ultraviolet security. We find 3 options in the first active hypotheses. 1. Nano blood. 2. Atmosphere/Baxter. 3. Aliens are real. I mean, well, he's right there. 4. Our own Bessie. 5. Deacon/time travel conjecture. And then it looks like Deacon logged into Tinker Tom's private terminal here to leave a note. We find an asterisk here, and then at the bottom, if I really were a time traveler, would I let a timeline exist where you knew I knew? D. Very clever, Deacon. And then finally, 6. Mutating water theory. Oh lord, this is the guy we just let inject us with stuff. And the next one, disproved theories, for now at least. 1. Center of Earth black hole. 2. 90% synth infiltration. 3. Nuka-Cola strawberry. Huh, wouldn't that be nice? And 4. Monty's theory. Whatever that means. And in the final one, field test log. Spike's delivering enough kinetic energy to be well into the lethal range, but cooling unit keeps failing. Melted 3 times. Treated Terry for first-degree burns. Got the reload time down with liquid nitrogen. Delayed for Terry's hypothermia treatment. Upper velocity. Can't find the spike. Getting close. I can feel it. Well, note to self. Don't let Tinker Tom experiment on you. But what is it that Tinker Tom is testing here? It's delivering kinetic energy. It has a cooling unit. It needs a reload time. We'll discover the answer to this a bit later. Now that Deacon is our companion, we can try to learn his thoughts.
Your thoughts?
A lot of our people help us once, maybe twice a month, if that. You've jumped right into the deep end. The Commonwealth can be the enemy just as much as the Institute. We've lost plenty of synths to hate mongers. Please, you do the talking. If I pick anything up, I'll let you know afterwards. One day the railroad's number will be up. I thought that day had come at the switchboard. I can't shake the feeling we're living on borrowed time. I've had this mug for too long. Might be time for a new face. I'm a sucker for those old world books. It must have been something living back then.
But for now, that's all he has to say. With that, we've talked with everybody and read every terminal in the railroad. Now, we could work on some of the side quests here in the railroad or focus on the primary plot. But before we do anything, we should really change our look. We have been the haggard, grieving parent searching for a son for the first 2 acts of the game, and it's time we change our look to better suit the railroad. In our next episode, we'll head to this Cambridge Polymer Labs to try and find the passcode to Code Defender. I publish new Fallout videos each and every week, so if you don't want to miss that episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already, but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter, or X, at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in another way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. YouTube members get little badges that appear next to their names in the comment sections of my videos and access to Ox emojis that they can use in my video comments and in the live chats of my live streams. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with the next episode in the full story of the railroad.
Don't look, but I think we're being watched.